He left with a lower body injury,
Yeah.
so we didn't really get a chance to see too much of him last night. Eric Mackermalla, our Team 1260 Sports legal analyst, he is a Habs fan, and he joins us on the show. Eric, how are you?
I'm good. I have a question.
Yeah.
So I was looking at your website, which is on the World Wide Web.
Yes.
And you have the picture of you and Will.
Yeah.
Will, are you a Teamster?
It's an old picture, all right?
We need to update
Lay
that
off.
thing.
Will, did you ever work in the Mafia? Were you in charge of killing people?
Is this a question you're supposed to ask openly anyways there, Eric? You know
I
better.
don't know. It's not like I'm a lawyer.
You know better than that.
Look, you
I
guys,
didn't learn enough, guys, in my 2 years of law school.
Eric, one thing you don't know is that when Will Fraser is not here, he is also on the show Boardwalk Empire. So that explains the look. Actually, the guy got a haircut yesterday. He looked sharp. We need to get those pictures updated.
It's an old
But,
picture.
hang on. I'm not suggesting, Will, that you're not beautiful because
Yeah.
clearly you're striking.
Yeah.
It's just when I looked at the picture, I handed over my money.
That intimidating, hey? I've never heard that before, to tell you the truth.
Oh, you're a very intimidating man.
Yeah.
Eric, before we get down to business here, what's up with the axe you have to grind with Clay Aiken right now? What's going on there?
I mean, we've talked about Celebrity Apprentice in the past. We talked about it last year when Meatloaf went crazy.
Yeah, he was awesome.
He was the best.
He showed
Just
up
my
crazy.
Pates. Oh, they're here. But Clay Aiken has been a little bit kind of arrogant, kind of giggly, kind of diminishing others. And you had mentioned this at the outset that the word on the street was that Clay Aiken was a bit of a jerk.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe you because you and I are both Claymates, and I subscribed to his newsletter. But then when I watched the show, I'm like, I'm not sure I'm a fan of Clay Aiken. He's a little bit conniving. There's another word I want to use. It starts with a D and ends in oosh, but I'm not going to use it.
You know what it is? He's still bitter from losing to Ruben Studdard. And that's
Ruben Studdard just declared bankruptcy.
exactly. That's what I'm talking about. He's like, how did I lose to that guy?
I mean, when your career is worse than Taylor Hicks's career, you have a problem.
Eric Mackermalla with us, our Team 1260 sports legal analyst. Let's go to Bounty Gate, and how is that becoming a legal issue?
Man, this legal issue is great for lawyers. Like, if I was on this case, I'd be the happiest guy because I'd be busy for a while. I'd be putting in some serious billables on this. There are so many layers. There's the first, just the basic issue of circumvention of the salary cap. You cannot pay people money that is outside the four corners of their contract. If you do so, that's a circumvention. So $1,500 for knocking someone's head off, and $1,000 for a card off. You give that money to them. That's a circumvention of the cap. That's the least of their problems. There's a second issue. It's bigger. It's player safety, and there are layers. The first one is the backdrop of concussion lawsuits. Right now, there are 32 lawsuits that have been filed by retired players alleging the NHL concealed the long-term effects of neurological issues as a result of concussions and headshots, namely dementia and brain disease. So this is your backdrop, that the NFL knew that there was an issue but didn't advise its players. So the players, this can be an aggravating circumstance in these concussion lawsuits. Number two, and this is really important, is a player that was nailed and either had their career ended or was severely injured as a result of a cheap shot can sue the player that hit him, the team, the coaches, and potentially the NFL. Less the NFL because I don't think they were aware of it. And, there is a precedent for this. There was a player in the late 70s, Dale Hackbard, who was a free safety for the Broncos. He was hit by Cincinnati fullback Charles Clark, and he broke his neck in 4 places. And he successfully went after Charles Clark and the Bengals in court. The court said, look, this lawsuit's completely cool, completely legitimate, so you can go ahead and sue. There's also the issue of criminal charges, assault and battery. If you go after someone on purpose and you apply force intentionally outside what is incidental contact for the game of football, then you can be brought up on criminal charges. And Williams can be brought up on the charge of conspiracy, also criminal charge, because he worked in concert with the players to set up this kind of stuff. And on top of that, guys, just the issue of optics for the NFL. Player safety has been front and center for Goodell. It is of paramount importance. Just ask Jerome Harrison. And this is not good. This is not aligned with Goodell wants the NFL to go. So from the NFL standpoint, Greg Williams, Sean Payton, Loomis, the GM of the Saints, they're all in trouble, I think. I'm looking at this. I think Williams is gone for a season. At least I think Payton is 2 to 4 games. Loomis gets fined, and they also forfeit, I think, multiple draft picks.
Legally, is the other concern for the league that not even so much what the Saints have done, but that this is going to cause other players, either current or former, to come forward and say, yeah, this happened in our dressing room for years as well?
It is. And I was talking to Sean Donovan last night at the Ottawa Sens game, and, he's played in the NHL, and he was talking at every single level. I think it's common knowledge that these types of bounties generally are institutional in nature. I think that it goes a little bit too far when you have a program put in place by a coach. But you're right. There is going to be that risk. Now, there is an unwritten code in the culture that, you don't sort of speak out against your teammates and against your team. But it does become possible. But here's the thing, and this is really important to remember. Whether a cheap shot is paid or unpaid, you can still sue if your career was ended or you were seriously injured. And that's what Dale Hackbart did. I don't think that when he was hit by the Bengals player that was part of a bounty program. But if someone inflicts punishment on you that is not part of incidental contact to the game, it's not within the scope of the game. A late hit's a good example. A high-low smack on a quarterback. That's one football player coming low on Brett Favre, the other one coming high. And that happened in the 2010 NFC Championship between the Vikings and the Saints, which, by the way, the NFL Network pulled off the NFL Network two nights ago, decided not to air it when they were supposed to. That becomes a problem. So, but you're right. This adds an added layer of complexity. In the NFL right now, what they are doing, so why I say this has become a legal matter and not a marketing matter anymore, is they are now looking at the league saying, how do we insulate ourselves and the teams moving forward from liability?
As far as the legal issues go against the Saints, would this be the league that would have to initiate that process, or is it other separate individual players that would have to do something like that?
The league would never go after its own team by way of legal proceedings. So what would happen is you would either have a player that was victimized that would sue. That's the big one. There's also the potential that there could be a class action from fans who say, look, when I bought my ticket, I thought I would be watching a game decided on athletic ability and not bounties. And there's kind of a precedent for that. The Jets fan filed a class action against the Patriots for Spygate. But ultimately, the big risk here is going to come from retired players if there's evidence of bounties, and the other big risk will come from players who were hurt.
And really, what's to keep a law firm from subpoenaing basically an entire league to ask each and every one of them, were you part of some sort of a pay for damage type scenario in your locker room?
And I think that's such a great point. I'm glad you raised it because, look, there are 50,000 pages here that Goodell has assembled in his investigation. That's number one. Number two, how many players have played in the NFL over the past 25 years? Number three, we know we have 32 and counting concussion lawsuits filed by retired players. We know that lawyers are lined up here in order to try and extract some kind of financial windfall. Remember, being a lawyer in the U.S. is different than Canada. In my opinion, it is far more entrepreneurial in the U.S. than it is in Canada. Canada, we're a lot more kind of conservative. But in the U.S., it is more of a business decision as to whether you sue someone. And the threat of litigation is going to be an issue for the NFL. However, I'm going to say this, that under concussion lawsuits in the U.S., 32 and counting, they have decided to defend those rather than at this point to settle. And they're doing that because they need to send a message to possible future claimants. If you sue us, just because we're a public business, just because we make our money in the public domain, it doesn't mean we're going to want this to go away. We are going to defend ourselves.
Eric, a couple other things just want to hit on here quickly. I was browsing your website this morning, actually, before the show, your sports law blog. And
OffsideSportsLaw.com?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, there you go. Good plug. Look,
it's my first plug in a year.
You had it written up there, Peyton Manning in the Decision Part 2, kind of as a joke. But do you think ESPN has approached Peyton Manning and said, hey, if you want to, we'll give you an hour to tell us where you're going.
We'll turn you into a complete social pariah as well.
The thing is, it's Peyton. He's fun. He's lovable. He's not Clay Aiken. It would not surprise me, though, if it's something material, if ESPN approached him. I would never see because that's just not Peyton Manning's thing. And anyway, if they want to shake on the deal, they couldn't because Peyton can't feel his right hand.
Every Friday, well, it started last Friday, went over extremely well, so we're going to keep it going at least for the next little while. Who would win in a fight Fridays? Today, Han Solo takes on Indiana Jones. Who do you like in that one?
I think I'd have to pick. I pick Indiana Jones because he's on a horse. I really don't know what to say. I have to pick Indiana Jones.
Han Solo has the Millennium Falcon, if we're looking at modes of transportation here.
Well, who would you guys pick?
Well, we're going to break that down here before 7 o'clock. We can't tell you right now.
Yeah.
A very complicated, in-depth analysis. I love it. This is why I love your show. Yeah. And I'm afraid of Will.
Eric, what do you got going on for charity?
Yeah, so there's the Do It for Darren Foundation. It's a youth-driven program focused on raising awareness and inspiring conversations about mental health. You may remember that Darren Richardson, daughter of hockey player Luke Richardson and Stephanie Richardson, she took her life at the age of 14. After that, they set up this Do It for Darren Foundation. It's doitfordarren.com. The Oilers, there's actually a league-wide initiative to support Do It for Darren. On March 16th, the Oilers will be honoring Darren Richardson and the Do It for Darren Foundation at a hockey game. I asked maybe that your listeners go to doitfordarren.com, take a look at the site. It is a very meaningful and worthwhile cause. The money goes to a very good cause, mental illness in youths. And maybe take a look and see if you can kind of dig into your pocket and send some money.
Good stuff, man. We always appreciate the time. We'll check in next week.
All right. Take care, guys.
That is Eric Macramella, Team 1260 Sports legal analyst. He's taking Indy because he rides a horse. Horrible answer. Horrible answer. We've got dozens and dozens of texts that have better answers than that. Handful of tweets that are also coming in a little bit better. And we will get to that here coming up just before 7 o'clock. Who would win in a fight Fridays? Han Solo versus Indiana Jones. The phones are open if you want in. Get in early, 426-TEAM, 426-8326. Break this down for us. We're going to let you know who we think will win this thing. But what about you? 426-TEAM, 426-8326. Han Solo versus Indiana Jones. 426-TEAM, 426-8326. Bob McKenzie is on the way just after 7 o'clock. Morning skate will happen as it always does at 7:25. We can take your calls then on the Oilers. Lost to the Montreal Canadiens last night. And we'll hear some post-game reaction from the likes of Tom Rennie